Alright, this is going to be your Graves Jungle VoD review for Akane in your jungle game against Evelynn. You do okay this game considering the circumstances of what happens to you level 1, but there's definitely a lot of things that you should have done differently. But that's what this is for, and we're going to cover all of them. We're going to try to get it done in under a half hour since this is my second try at this video. But we're still going to start with the same stuff. That Evelynn that you went up against, this was her match history leading up into her game against you. So you went up against someone who was pretty legit, knew what they were doing, and she's just one step or even two steps ahead of you for the rest of the game. And we want to focus on how that happens and how we're going to avoid that going into your next games. But there's several answers for that, which is good. We're still going to look at these graphs right here to show the difference in where she really starts to take off. There's particular jungle fights where she starts to get edges, and I would say after the fight at 16 minutes, where they kill you guys and get dragon, the game's kind of over. Pretty much everyone has fallen behind at that point, and your windows to fight them pretty much have all closed. But before that, there's still plenty to talk about. Your runes are fine, all that stuff looks good. But we are going to talk about your decision to buy too much attack speed, specifically at minute 12. This base right here, we're going to talk about that when we get to it. But without further ado, we're going to get right into the game. Now, the most important thing that probably happens this game, or maybe not most important, but the most consequential and avoidable thing that happened to you was right at the start of the game. We speed up just a little bit. We can see that at 15 seconds, once the gates go down, you are not immediately heading to your buff. This is super important, especially because, see, it takes them 5 seconds, but she still gets out here quicker than you do. And as we see, you're still in the fountain right now. And then bad things happen because you get here late.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
So what should have happened instead is that you should have already been here at this time. You would already be in this bush. You're way back here though. And then when you see them getting close here, you would start Q because you haven't started a skill yet. But if you were waiting in this bush and you saw them all here, you would start Q and just shoot Evelynn and unload your entire kit on her. And they would turn around because they wouldn't be able to fight what would be a potential 3v3 or worse with you already taking that much damage off of her. Evelynn only has, actually Evelynn has a decent amount of armor. But if you start the fight with them taking all that damage, they're going to back up 100%. But instead what happens is they get into your own jungle before you do, which shouldn't happen. And you as a jungle losing your flash against someone who's also a smart jungle and they all see it, this really makes you just less dangerous to all of the enemy lanes for the rest of the game. Or at least for the first 5 minutes with your flash on cooldown. Then you eventually base, and this is actually another big thing. You're here just ever so slightly late for your leash. But this ends up being very important. This has big consequences for sure. So then you do scuttle, which is fine. We're just going to kind of mirror what Evelynn's doing right now. She did her red wraiths and then went straight to blue. And right now, you're at your wolves after doing scuttle. But we're going to watch how you started your wolves because this is important. You throw a bad Q, which doesn't hit the entire camp. What you need to do is start the camp by shooting it from this distance and then backing up in a straight line. once you back up in a straight line that's somewhat close to the wall, the creeps are going to be forced to follow you the way they are now. How they're all followed in a line. They're going to do this towards you in between the wall where you run. And then you can hit the entire camp with your Q. But when you jump over immediately and cast your Q too close, you haven't given them the chance to like funnel into this line so you don't hit one of the wolves. And that's 141 damage that you're missing. Early game, when you need to be as efficient and clear as fast as possible, this is just lazy. And Graves' biggest strength is his clear speed, so you need to really be doing this. This is pivotal, especially at the level you're playing at. But now we're going to add in the 5 seconds of leash that you didn't get. Then we're going to add, let's say, another 2 seconds to your wolf camp that shouldn't have happened. And we're going to see how this plays out, because now Evelynn's the one that's already gotten level 3 and ready to attack somebody. And you just now finish your red at 309. So if we go back just a little bit, we'll say that you should have been done with your red right about now. And already pathing towards the bush here. Now Singe would have seen you, and Evelynn would have seen you as well. So then you would have been able to head her off sooner. And you probably would have saved Garen's flash. So we're going to watch one more time. We're also going to look at how you engage on her here. One more time. Now, you actually don't have vision of her yet. So, you're just going purely on timing here, and it's not too bad. You're trying to get on her before her charm comes back up, which is good. But when you dash in, that means you only get 2 shots before you have to reload. Typically, you should be starting fights with 1 shot to apply red buff, start your Q, and then dash. That way you have 2 shots ready again, so that you can hit her 3 times before your first reload. When you dash in, you eliminate the potential for that. And it's also important to note out here that because she did not use Electrocute on her gank, she uses it on you. And because you have fleet footwork, you actually lose this fight. You really needed that 3rd auto attack in order to actually trade evenly with her, because you don't have Electrocute. She does. So with that in mind, and the fact that you could have microed better, should have had a better leash, and should have been here quicker, I think you see how close this actually is. Had you got that extra shot in there and had maybe another 100 HP, maybe she ends up flashing away from you. But you don't even have your flash right now, so you are forced to retreat because Singed is coming. And this is very important. Now you know they're chasing you right now. And you still decide to start this camp and use your Q. Your Q has a 12-second cooldown right now. So you know that you've gotten seen, that you've been seen, and you still throw your Q here. And then they show up. But this shouldn't be surprising. You knew they were chasing you. Now, this is where not having flash and not having your Q really cost your team a lot. Because if we back up here, You start the camp, and you get one of them. But all the damage you do makes it easy for Evelynn to just take the whole thing. We're gonna watch her XP bar go up, so she gets all that. Singe gets to kill you, and Yasuo burns his flash and ignite for the kill. So if this goes just a little differently, if you don't use your Q, you save your Q and you don't start this camp, you're going to take less damage, about 50 less damage. You're going to have an extra shot to shoot this Singed, because you had to reload, because you only had one shot. And you would also have your Q. Your Q is still down at this moment. So you only get to hit him with your W. With how low this Singed was, if you had hit him with a full Q, he would be dead. Or Yasuo would be able to ignite him to kill him. But Yasuo has to flash and ignite to seal this kill. And him using his flash and ignite, even though it gets him double buffs, it's going to make him weaker in lane, because Ahri still has her flash and barrier. And we're going to see that happen. So you're dead right now. Finally walking back. Evelynn still has her flash, Ahri still has her flash, and her barrier. Yasuo goes in when he probably shouldn't. And since Evelynn still has flash and Yasuo doesn't, and you're only finally getting here, she gets to take her double buffs back, and she's now a full level ahead of you with double buffs. So it's already not good for you. Since Graves is a strong farmer, you can still get back at this point, but your early flash and your lateness in a bad leash, in doing your wolves a little slowly, getting to top lane late, all of these things really added up. And then you didn't have your Q because you started the camp over here when they chased you. So after this point in the game, you just go back and start farming a lot. The game kind of slows down for the most part. You do have to chase Karma out of your jungle here. But it's important to note that you got the first scuttle and you get this second scuttle. These scuttles that you're getting are actually super important. If you weren't getting these, you'd actually be pretty far behind. But it's super important. Without those, if you were a weaker jungle that didn't farm very well, this Evelynn would probably be 2 levels up on you very quickly. So it's a very good job to be getting those scuttles in this kind of matchup. There's really not much you can do top lane right now because Garen is losing with magic resistance to a Singed. So you're really just in power farm mode here. You managed to still hit a good buy spike and spend all of your money to get an item. Very efficient. And this is important. Anytime you're spending this much time walking from base to blue or from camp to camp, you should be using the F keys, F1, F2, F3, F4, F5 to be looking at your teammates and assessing the map, figuring out where your best chance of success is likely to be. I think in this case, if you're looking towards where you want to gank next, it's probably mid lane, because Yasuo is your strongest teammate, and currently Ahri doesn't have flash or barrier, so she's susceptible. Now what happens in this game is that they get chunked out, so Nami's forced to base here. She doesn't have any mana, and they're getting beat up. So if you were just looking, they kind of looked healthy, but then 20 seconds later, Nami's got no mana, and they're actually quite hurt, because Karma lands a good poke. So if you weren't looking consistently, you might be fooled into thinking the bot lane was pretty healthy, because right before this hit, they kind of were. Which is why you always have to make sure you're aware of what's going on in the lanes next to you, especially the ones that you're close to. If you're down here doing blue buff, you need to be looking more at what's happening bot lane, what's happening top lane, because this is the lane that you can affect. Now this is important because this is where you lose your second flash. Partially because bot lane's getting beat up, but I think it's also because you weren't looking at the map and respecting the potential roam. You take blue and Gromp here. Then we go to your side of Vision. And this is already very risky. Karma's missing. Ahri just put mid in. She's right here. And you're still pushing into their jungle alone. Yasuo can't really help at this moment. Ezreal can't help. Nami's in base. And you're on their side of the map. So this is very bold. You're trying to get vision, so that's good. But this is very greedy and it's unsafe. You're lucky that Evelynn is not already here, because you would already be dead. There would be a charm on you right now, and they would probably be collapsing on you. But you go for vision. Spotting out Evelynn. You probably thought she was a Krug, so this is good. Spotting her out like this is strong. Trying to find Evelynn for your team is one of the best ways to counterplay her. But you do this at a time when you really can't. Karma comes up here to kill you, and you end up having to flash away. So, had you been more aware that bot lane couldn't do anything to come help, and that Nami was in base, that means that you can't walk this far out past the river. Because you're too close to the enemy. You're absolutely surrounded right now. We can see Ahri over here and Karma over here. They're all alone. Had Evelynn already been here, then you'd be dead. So the way we would avoid that is that if you were looking at bot lane, you'd see that Nami was basing. And at this moment, you probably should already be walking back, because Karma's flanking you. Or you should actually be walking towards Yasuo, because you can get to Yasuo before Karma gets to you if she's chasing you. But ideally, what you should be doing to get vision against Evelynn, so because this is good, but you have a ward later on that is not so good, you should be warding here against Evelynn. That way, if she starts chickens, you know. So this could be a two-pronged attack to get vision in her jungle. I think you have one currently in your inventory right now. Or no, it's on cooldown. But later on there's a control word that you drop, and it just gets killed. But we'll get back to that. But this is a definite overextension on your part. And then to make it worse, you cast both of your spells at Ahri, so you have nothing left to hurt this Karma. This Karma is actually kind of killable here. You have Red Smite, you bought your AD item, you have 120 AD, but you just used your Q and your W. If you potentially Q Karma and shoot her first, you could take a lot of HP off of her and send her back, but you're already in here too deep, and now you have no cooldowns. So you're forced to run away, and ultimately you're forced to flash. So you have two flashes this game where you had to flash away from the enemy, and you haven't boosted on a gank yet. That would start with not putting yourself in so much danger first, by checking the lanes and seeing if you are closer to your teammates or if the enemy can collapse on you sooner. Then we just farm some. Your scuttle control is good. We're gonna just look at this gank real quick. Yasuo is definitely the person you want to be helping most this game, because he's pretty strong. He's the most helpable, which is important. But you back out of this gank in a way that worries me a little bit. You see Singed come down and you spot him out, so you should know that it's Singed who hits this. But once you get spotted, you start to run away. Problem is, that's right when Ari goes in. So this definitely tells me that your map awareness is probably one of your weaknesses, because you only notice that she went back in like a few seconds later. You need to have already been walking back in the moment like you were retreating. She only took a second. You were worried because they had vision on you, so you wanted to retreat, but the play here is still better. See what I mean? You only started turning around at this point. If this Yasuo were a lesser player, this Ari would have killed him a lot quicker. But he needed your help. But it ends up working out. It does cost him his flash, though. Had you helped him sooner, he might still have his flash. Keep fast forwarding. Your real goal here is just to finish your warrior enchantment and get boots. This is important though. This is that 12-minute buy we were talking about, where you should not have bought this much attack speed. And it's okay to get 1 dagger on Graves, but not 2. In general, CDR basically is attack speed on Graves. So if we look at your E real quick, every time you use E, you reload a shell. So if you only buy straight attack speed on Graves without using your E more often, all that means is you're going to be reloading more often because you're using your shells quicker. But if you have more E's because you have more cooldown reduction, that means you actually have more bullets and more DPS. So the decision to get more attack speed here, you should only get 1 dagger to build into Berserker Greaves. Attack speed should always be saved as a 3rd item on Graves because of his E interaction. Getting 10% CDR with Warrior, then 20% more with Black Cleaver, and then potentially 40% with Blue Buff. This is what makes you really strong, because you start maxing your E second and you get it down to like a 8-second cooldown, and more auto attacks reduce it even further at that point. So you don't actually need attack speed if you have 40% CDR on your E, because you're reloading your shells and reloading less. And then if you're trying to build crit, I know the shop recommends that you build BD second on Graves, but that's kind of a joke, because you absolutely need Cleaver. Crit and attack speed is only as good as the amount of AD that you have, and Black Cleaver is better for even more reasons because of Graves' passive. You shoot multiple bullets in a cone. So once Graves gets Black Cleaver, once you auto attack somebody, if you hit them with 4 bullets, you are going to shred 20% of their armor. So you're going to fully stack Black Cleaver with just 2 auto attacks. This instantly makes Black Cleaver like a better purchase on Graves than other characters. And it's exactly why you need it, on top of the cooldown reduction reasons and the interaction with his E. You really shouldn't be buying this much attack. Okay to get 1, but one of these needs to be Strong Sword, and it needs to be building into your Black Cleaver. You also need Black Cleaver more than P, because you need HP on Graves, because you're a short range damage dealer. It is the combination of Black Cleaver, HP, Red Smite, and his stacking armor True Grit that makes Graves tanky. If you don't buy these things, you're actually not that tanky. And this is that ward we were talking about. And this is a very crucial fight where I think you probably lose control of the game. So after coming out of base with your buy, not to say that these 2 daggers are terrible right now should you get into a fight, but you don't want 2 of them. So you drop a control ward, kill a control ward, and you drop a ward at the choke point. Once again, against Eve, this ward needs to be here. This is still going to catch Ahri if she roams down to bot lane, which is important, so it's better than no ward. But against Eve, you need to make the extra effort to get this into where it sees the camp. If you see less of the river, that's okay, because you need to see camp against Evelynn. And then you drop a control ward, but because you're the only one here, they just kill this control ward. Control wards should be placed where you actually have control and you can protect them. So that's 75 gold wasted. You would have want to put that here or potentially on your blue buff. That way you have something that can be protected. That ward is protecting something. But you just don't have any control right now, so they kill your ward for free. Just to look at it one more time, you even kill their ward, right? Even though both of them are pretty much here, more or less, you can still kill this ward before they come and kill you. So there's nothing stopping them from doing the same thing. I would be a little more careful about where you place your control wards if you're not there to protect it. But here's another time when you try to gank bot lane and you probably just shouldn't, because Nami isn't there. You're forced out of your blue buff, unfortunately. Now you do pick up a nice kill here on Karma. But this is where this play should end. Right now, you have pretty good gold in your inventory. And this does go back to where you should have had the longsword. Had you bought that longsword, you would have enough money to back for Phage right now, which is a much better buy than whatever else you would get right now. You wouldn't get Zeo and you wouldn't get a BF sword. Phage would be the perfect buy here, especially because you need the HP versus this assassin mid lane. But what happens is you go back in here instead. And this goes poorly. Now that's your third flash where you had to flash away from something. But this time, you still die for it. Now, yes, it's because Kai'Sa flashed after you, but that doesn't really matter, because this is where it's just finally enough. All of your flashes have been defensive, but this one is defensive, and it still gets you killed. So the reason why this is so impactful is that your bot lane was doing okay, but once Kai'Sa picks up all this gold, this really starts to get lopsided, especially against the support, because Karma picked up some kills too. Now, the reason why I say the game is kind of over after this, especially 2 minutes from now after a dragon fight, is because of your buy. You don't have anything good to buy right now, and then I think this is where you buy Merc Treads and Longsword, right? You should have already had this though. And now, these Merc Treads that you're getting, these aren't because like you're ahead and you want to stay tanky. These are like the, oh no, their team does too much damage and I need magic resistance kind of Merc Treads. Those are never the good ones that you want to buy. It's already like, it feels too late. What you always want on Graves or Berserker. And then you would rather have a QSS or a Hex Drinker later, because Graves just uses Berserker Greaves so well. You don't like having to buy attack speed in general. The precision tree with Legend Alacrity and Berserker Greaves should be enough, because you need CDR, like we said, to stack his E and actually use his reloading properly. PD only comes later after you have like 250 plus AD and lethality. There's a reason you don't see PD second. Only rarely is it seen third. But you finally go back and start clearing again. This is where you power clear towards the dragon. So right now, after you clear this, you should be looking at the map. So you would be seeing that out of this moment, you're pathing, that your bot lane died. You try to gank mid. and then you try to come bot lane. Like 2v4. Now this game is already behind. You guys are already losing a little bit, so you need to slow it down. But you actively decide to fight with your Yasuo into a 2v4 where your bot lane is already dead. Now, you almost pick Karma here. But ultimately, you guys lose this 2v4, and it's really not that close. You get one of them, but getting one of them for 2 deaths and a dragon and giving red buff, this just isn't worth it. This is where the game probably falls out of your hands. You don't really have any good buys right now. Evelynn's stacked and she has 2k. It doesn't look good. As an early game champion who needs to get farmed up and really wants to power spike on Black Cleaver, at this moment, you're nowhere near that. And they're already ahead of you. So, and for all intents and purposes, this is over. You could still get lucky, and maybe they were to throw at Baron, maybe Yasuo lands a good ulti, but in terms of you deciding how this game is going to go, you're definitely in the backseat right now. So what you would be looking for is to be patient, and maybe hope Ezreal gets more mana and Iceborne at some point. But the reason why this is still bad is because you're up against an all AP team, right? Singed, Evelynn, Ahri, Kai'Sa, who is AP, and Karma, who does magic damage. So this Iceborne Gauntlet isn't even a good purchase for this Ezreal this game. The only one who is really doing that well is Yasuo, because full tank Garen is just not going to be useful compared to a Singed who has, you know, 250 plus AP with his ult on. This just doesn't look good. This would be a position where you already needed Cleaver by now, and to be working on your Hex Drinker, so that your items more resemble what this Yasuo has. If you were more in Yasuo's position, build and gold-wise, then I would say this is still carryable. But the 5-0 and 4 Evelynn with Lichbane is still a big threat. But we're kind of going to see how the rest of this game goes real quick. A lot of power farming. Unfortunately, this is a bit of a desperation gank, and you can see it, but this still could have worked out a little better. Maybe just if they weren't so fed, maybe if Ahri didn't have barrier, maybe if you had Black Cleaver already. But especially because... Go back and watch it one more time. This is especially bad because you use your flash for this. So this is finally a flash that you try to use on a gank to put some pressure out, but, you know, it doesn't. It's already too late. But I think you could argue that if you were to have an extra 400 HP here, and maybe just a no magic mantle, instead of the money spent on merc treads, with 400 HP you could still survive. Or maybe you burst Ahri harder. But at this point you're just too far behind to be making these kinds of aggressive plays against somebody that has their barrier up. You've just fallen too far behind. Now, I believe you guys surrender this game pretty soon. But as you can see, you're finally starting to build your Cleaver, but it's just a little too late, right? And now these 2 daggers that are sitting in your inventory, they've been sitting in your inventory for 8 minutes. You can't be buying attack speed like this on Graves. Only get 1, and you should only get 1 if you're building it into Zerker Greaves. Because now they're finally coming back to bite you. And if you had 600 extra gold right now, you could have your Cleaver. You could still finish Cleaver here and still look for a decent team fight. Ezreal's about to spike soon with more mana. He might even hit level 11 soon. He's finally got his Iceborne. That would become workable. But without Cleaver, you just don't have your core items. And you guys end up losing the next fight that happens pretty hard. So you have a lot of money. You see how much time you're spending walking around right now when you have the money to buy exactly what you need, and you finally die. Dying with this much money in your pocket is just bad. You had plenty of time to base and get back out on the map. I also think at this point in the game, you probably needed to have red trinket about 5-10 minutes ago. Once you're all losing and the pressure is on you on all sides, you know that there's going to be wards to clear in your jungle. So if they can see all of your movements, having a red trinket like your Nami does is going to be way more valuable than your yellow trinket, especially because Evelynn is invincible. So you have the most vision score on your team, unfortunately, but you still need red trinket in this kind of situation where you're losing the game. This is kind of a desperation play, but you guys surrender right after you take push with Baron. So the game's mostly over at this point. But I'm going to leave some notes in the description of the video. I hope this one is more coherent and easier to hear than the last video I had, which was impossible to hear. So if you have any questions, just reach out to me through Discord. Good luck.